Hi, my name is Jordan, and I like to make games for fun. Over this weekend, I participated in the Game Maker Community Jam 39. GMC Jam 38 was the first jam I'd ever done, and it was nice to see how far I'd come in such a short time. In the last jam, I completed a game called Guess Who Hostage Rescue, and barely submitted it in time, despite the game being very short and easy. People didn't think much of it either, mostly due to an oversight where you were immediately required to eliminate all dark or light-skinned people, based on the first clue. I swear I was just trying to think of clues that were visually distinctive, but if I had more time to play test the game, I probably would have realized this sooner. It was also easy to the point of being boring. Basically, it was the game of Guess Who, but played by yourself. The theme for this game was Pathetic Creature, which I really enjoyed. This is one of the first game jams I've ever done where I immediately liked the theme and had an idea and just ran with it. Day one was Thanksgiving in America, so most of my time was spent with family, but I did spend a few minutes brainstorming and I drew a few characters as well. My goal was to have a Pokemon-like game, but instead of beating all the characters to a bloody pulp, I wanted to be able to lift them up and compliment them and make them happy. I made some designs for creatures that I thought would be good. My original idea was that they would each have something that made them sad. So there was the short kid, the fat kid, Four Eyes, which is the glasses kid, and a few others you can see here. I then went into Sprite and drew everything using a simple 4-color palette from lowspec.com. I animated everything with a simple 4-frame animation since I didn't want to spend all day on these. Most of these were finished on day 2. On day 2, I wanted to make a turn-based battle system like in Pokémon, but menus are tricky, so I ended up doing a simplified Earthbound style game. This really wasn't terribly difficult. I just put together a state machine with a bunch of notes, commented in to tell me what each state was supposed to do so I didn't forget anything. Then I used a series of alarms to trigger the next state every time something happens, so it just goes through the battle one state after the other. I was worried I would use up all the alarms, but ultimately I only needed about 7 for all the steps since there isn't a timer on the player choosing an attack option. I made a system like this a while back for a game where I try to combine merge games, deck building, and turn-based combat. I didn't have the skill or knowledge to really pull this off, so I had to take a break from it. The new battle system takes some things I learned and puts them together for a fun interaction with the creature. Here's how the battle system is played. You can either praise, hug, or listen. Your objective is to fill up the happiness meter by using the praise attack. The catch is that every turn the creature will have a negative thought that brings the happiness down. You can increase the effectiveness of your praise with a hug, which boosts the amount of happiness you can give. And if there's a massive hit coming from the negative thought on the next turn, you can listen to the problem, which mitigates the damage it does. It sounds strange when I say it, but it's all fairly intuitive once you're playing. So now I had a battle system, some cool characters, and I needed to put a Pokemon-style overworld in a place where you would collect items for the creatures to give them what little happiness they started with. The first thing I made was a little player character. Animating all 4 directions took a bit of time, so I didn't bother with an idle sprite. If I were to add anything to the game at this point, it would be to revise his design. The creatures are all 32 by 32 pixels in size, but the player is 16 by 16, so he feels smaller. His movement doesn't feel great. It's easier to feel than it is to see, but it doesn't really matter for a game like mine. It's also my first time making a 4-directional character, and considering I didn't use any guides, I think I did an okay job. I then set up a room for the player to walk around in, but it was really difficult to see the characters since there was only 4 colors in the whole game. I did 2 things to fix this. I added a 5th color, almost black, that is used for the background dithering effect so that it's darker. It's the only place in the whole game where I use it. I also added a very light outline to any character that will show up on the overworld screen. This is more than anything else to help them pop out. Of course, I had to make a second sprite for each character because the outline wouldn't look good in the battle screen due to the light background behind the creatures. I then got started drawing the city in Sprite. Normally I would make a tile set, but since this is just one room, I figured it would be easier to draw out the whole thing. I made a bunch of buildings, then a bunch of decorations to go around the city. I think the fence and buildings look pretty good here. I set up a bare bones start menu when the game boots up. Then I got to work making the introductory cutscene. For this I decided to make a series of scenes without moving parts in them just to save time. All the text is baked into the images, which isn't ideal, but for a small project like this, it should be okay. I love this classic Pokemon font I'm using, though it's too wide to use anywhere else in the game. If I make it any smaller than it is now, it starts to look funny. I also created a self-portrait to use at the beginning of the game to be your professor. He doesn't look a ton like me, but I think it's good enough. The eyes look a little darker than mine, I think. At this point, I had most of the game up and running. You could move around the overworld nicely, and it would transition to battles after a couple seconds. With a mostly finished product, I felt good leaving off that night. On day 3, I started out with the music for the game. I used Mixcraft for all my music. I wanted to create something that sounded like it belonged in the Pokemon universe, so that's what I did. I created a slow march song for the menus and intro. Then I sped up the song and added a few more instruments to create a town theme. I had an idea for a battle theme, but it wasn't sounding the way I wanted it, so I scrapped it and started over. Pokemon battle themes have a unique sound that comes from a billion fast notes coming all at once, and it actually takes a really long time to do all of that when you're manually plugging in every note. So I respect the original composer, but that's not something I have time for. Instead, I made something not 8-bit that works just fine, but I don't think it will blow anyone's mind. For the sound effects, I used an old Humble bundle because 8-bit sound effects are also hard. At some point, I'm going to download a sound effect creator software, but for now, I'm fine using pre-made effects. At this point in the game, I was pretty much finished, so I just went through and added a bit of polish and a few quality of life features. I created some item boxes at the bottom that show what item you've collected, and I also made the game easier in general by lowering the amount of damage enemies do to themselves. Every number in the battle is determined based on the player's level, which increases every battle. That way you don't accidentally run into an enemy who is too difficult if you fight them in an undesirable order. The enemy attack is chosen during the player's turn from any number between 0 and the player's level times 2. I made a secret final boss that doesn't use this system because I know you'll fight him last, so his numbers are set to be a challenge for the player. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this game turned out. The judging period happens over the next 2 weeks, so I'll find out then where I placed. Until then, it was great making this game, and to everyone else participating, good luck in the jam. My name is Jordan, and I love to make games, music, and anything creative really. If I find something cool or interesting, I make a video about it. If that interests you, feel free to like and subscribe. If not, I appreciate you watching my video anyway.